morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to another HRO Today educational podcast. Today we're going to be starting a new podcast series called Understand This. I'll explain what that is in just a moment. I'm Elliot Clark. I'm the CEO of HRO Today. We publish HRO Today Magazine, HRO Today EMEA, and HRO Today APAC. We are the producers of the HRO Today events held around the world and the managers of the HRO Today Association. Today we're going to be talking about technology. And this is the beginning of a series of podcasts that we have named Understand This. In a very real sense, every executive's job is the ability to predict in a confusing and opaque world. And one area where this has become increasingly difficult is talent acquisition. Now, while the market is more competitive for talent than ever, we have a problem with technology. For those who saw the March 2023 HRO Today magazine, in my column, I talked about the difficulty of just understanding what technology does. We are drowning in technobabble and phrases such as I used in the examples in my column, things like heuristic algorithms and artificial intelligence and natural language processing. When I talk to HR leaders and executives and chief HR officers and heads of talent, they will complain that there's all this different software out there. A lot of it has overlapping functionalities, and more to the point, the description of it is always confusing. And really, all they want to know is how's it work? Tell me where it worked in the real world. Give me an example of a product that has been applied in the real world and worked well. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to be focusing on a data and analytics product that was deployed at one of the largest healthcare and retail organizations in North America. Our guest today is Noelle Paris, who is the Senior Vice President of Client Services at 7Step, and she's going to be giving us this case study. And actually, she has two really good examples. So this is the first of two podcasts we're going to do with Noelle. Noelle actually has been with 7Step almost 13 years. And one of the things she brings as a unique perspective is she started her career as a recruiter working on a desk with a telephone and a computer recruiting people. So she's been at every stage and every level of the recruiting industry and the RPO industry up now to being one of the senior leaders at 7Step. Noelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Elliot. Really happy to be here.
Well, thank you. And 7Step, I think our audience knows, is RPO and contingent management organization, Total Talent Solutions, one of the top-rated firms on the HRO Today Baker's Dozen consistently, and also provides some proprietary technology, specializes in hard-to-fill talent in very competitive areas. Anything that you want to add about 7Step that I perhaps haven't covered?
I think you did a pretty nice job there. I think I also would just say, the conversation that we're going to have today around data analytics and predictive indicators and all of that, I think that 7Step is really emerging in that space right now with our proprietary data analytics tool called Surveyo Insight. So we'll talk a little bit about that today, but I think that tool continues to be a bit of a differentiator for us.
Well, that's great. So, a lot of the practitioners, Noelle, they complain that everything sounds alike. But in truth, the tech products don't sound like anything. We have all these buzzwords, the heuristic algorithms, unstructured data, and all these acronyms, NLP, AI, etc. So what does the product actually do? And they want these hard examples. So I want to start off with you and just ask you, tell us a bit about the needs of your client, this healthcare organization, and the challenge that they faced in recruiting, and what the data looked like or what they were relying on before you began using the Surveyo tool, and what you thought the objectives or goals were initially. So tell us about what the state was when you started this application of Surveyo, and we'll talk about the journey as we go through your example.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll definitely set the stage, specifically for this case study. The example I'll use, as you said, is, a large healthcare client of ours where we do probably between 5,000 and 8,000 hires a year for them, depending on the year, typically shared services roles within IT, finance, HR, and legal, as well as a large clinical role. And the challenge that, they've been up against in a post-2020 world is that the healthcare talent landscape is in a state of sort of constant flux, incredibly unpredictable. And so this client in particular has been faced with rapidly changing needs, a lack of the ability to clearly forecast. They're experiencing growth via acquisitions, but then, going back to these stats, they're experiencing a real lack of visibility and confidence in the confusing data that they have. They're getting sort of multiple inputs of information, but no one really able to sift through all of that data to tell a story and really help them make the right decisions. So this lack of clarity really led to slow or unclear decision making, longer time to fill, low satisfaction scores from hiring managers and candidates, as well as a continued large vacancy gap with the inability to quickly close roles. So to sort of just wrap up the setup section here, large organization, constantly evolving needs, and really just an unclear view into what was happening across their total talent landscape.
So what did 7-Step and the client do to improve the outcomes? And I think you had a specific example that everyone should remember from 2021 about doing the vaccine rollout that you were going to share. So if you want to, explain how, you guys got in the midst of helping support that with the data analytics and the hiring, because that had to be a massive undertaking, as we all know. I mean, the U.S. had somewhere around 130 million people get at least 3 or 4 shots over the course of that period of maybe 6 to 8 months. So the amount of pressure in the market was intense.
Yeah, exactly. It really was. It was intense. That's an understatement. So to go back to setting the stage for this client, what they were working to accomplish in 2021 was a delivery of 70 million vaccines, 50 million COVID tests. They had 8,600 new positions to fill, and they had to make 50,000 hires in 30 days. In order to meet all of this. And so we needed to step up and really help provide this clarity and this visibility under all sorts of conditions, the cost pressures, the urgency to serve the public and serve their constituents, a really tight talent supply, and then remote and on-site challenges. We were all there. 2021, as this vaccine started to roll out, many of our healthcare clients were in just a really challenging moment. And so we think, how did we do it? Well, we were ready by using Surveyo Insights. So basically, by bringing all of these different pieces of data together into one place, we were able to tell us what had happened. And so we had predictive indicators of where we were going. We could use that knowledge to quickly pivot our strategies, and we could see clearly where and if we were going to fail. So by giving visibility to your entire talent ecosystem, you sort of gain that agility and become really highly responsive. So I'll give 3 examples of where we gained that visibility using this system. The first one was in the talent supply. So we were able to look at the perm, the contract, the external and the internal talent supply for the organization. And then we were able to layer that against the geographies they were in and the certifications that they had. We then looked at the resource supply of capacity planning across their entire organization. We were able to look at the total number of RPO recruiters that they had, their internal recruiting team, their contractor staffing. And because they have access, again, to all of these systems in one place, the tool was able to really show capacity and allow this client to make decisions as to where to put the work based on which teams had capacity in that moment. And so the proper distribution of the work volume really allowed people to move very efficiently. And then we were able to really process performance. So far beyond things like looking at time to fill, we were able to dial into efficiency, quality, retention, satisfaction, really look at what the candidates were saying, what the market was doing, and keep this information really all in one place. So we had the visibility of what was happening and where. We were able to look at our supply of who could do this work, and then we were able to start to process how it was performing. From there, we really were able to gain a lot of agility and fluidity. So we gained the ability to increase internal mobility and make really proper external placements. So as the organization mandated the vaccine, No one knew it was coming. It really happened overnight. And, our executives called us and said, this is happening. It's happening at 9 a.m. We got to get ready. And within 24 hours, we were able to spin up these custom dashboards where we could see vaccination status of all incoming talent. So the internal population, the external population, the contingent population, and properly place the roles based on a really rapidly evolving situation. So we were able to quickly move from the reactive to the proactive by using these early estimates. So we looked at across the United States, essentially, where we thought we might have the most challenge in filling these positions based on folks' vaccine status or their willingness to get that, because we were capturing all of this data. From there, we were able to determine which of the positions could then go remotely. We moved all of those to a remote, and then the roles that couldn't go remote, potentially based on a certification requirement, we just immediately doubled down on increased sourcing, increased advertising, and increased recruiting power so that we were immediately able to achieve target. So the visibility allowed us the agility to make these moves and these decisions, again, almost in real time as this decision was made. And we were incredibly successful for it. The end result there were really almost immediate 90% increase in hiring. They were able to administer 70 million immunizations with 50 million COVID tests. And we were also able to do this while keeping a really heightened focus on our diversity recruiting by creating customized diversity dashboards. And this client in particular ranked 26 on the 2021 Diversity Inc. Top 50 ranking coming out of this initiative. So, again, by using this really highly evolved analytics aggregator, we were able to take inventory of what we had. We were able to get objective support to pivot where we needed to really quickly. And then we just kept advancing, and we were able to help this organization achieve some really, really lofty goals.
Let me ask you just one quick question, and that is, during this, you were getting all this data. What was the biggest surprise? Were there areas that you thought were problem areas that turned out to be less problematic, and ones you didn't realize were difficult that turned out to be where you were actually having issues? Tell us what surprised you in the data.
I think what was most surprising in the data there, it was actually a positive result. And it was that because we were able to show all of the open roles across their entire landscape, as well as their internal employee population mapped against their openings, so we could kind of help them predict where they could leverage their internal mobility in order to fill these roles a lot faster. What I was the most surprised about was how quickly the client agreed to pivot. I think in these moments, especially in 2021, we almost were frozen in time for a minute there. And I think because we were able to show the data so transparently, it allowed this organization to make decisions really quickly. And I was incredibly surprised at their ability to do that, their willingness to do that, and then the positive results from being able to.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's a great example of how you were able to use the Surveyo product, which I understand is based on the Latin word for weaving things together, Surveyo, to sort of pull in data fields that might not be normally used, the certification or particularly vaccine status, and very quickly build out a response, pulling in from CRMs and HRMS systems, et cetera, et cetera. A great example, Noelle, and I'm going to have you back to talk about another example, I think, with the same client, a little bit later in this series. So very excited. Thank you so much for taking part in it. Folks, you haven't had enough of Noelle Paris, who is the Senior Vice President of Client Services at 7Step. She'll be back for episode 2 of Understand This, where she will explain once again how they use technology to solve a problem using a real-world, real-life example, giving us some details to the extent that you can divulge in the internet, on a public forum, etc. But we'll go into that. Noelle, thanks so much for taking part in the podcast.
Thanks, Elliot. Looking forward to coming back.
All right, that's great. And thank you to the audience for your time and attention, and we'll look forward to you joining us on the next segment of Understand This for the HR Today Educational Podcast.